So anyway, what we have here, a lot of news, I think, starting off with Zoom. And Zoom has got a new update that just was released. And the main reason is the client side of it. And what they are promising for this release is that this will enable encrypted communications by May the 30th. So I think that's a major point of this release. I think they did have some, yeah, exactly. So also, paid users have the ability to control a little more of the routing, and they can choose to not to have their video necessarily not routed to China. So they're trying to address some of the concerns they have as they've talked about their 90-day improvement work. Besides that, Google, they've been working on doing some cleanup of their Chrome extensions. And the big problem here is that there's a lot of malware extensions that are going out, and a lot of them are going after cryptocurrency credentials. And so Google is essentially playing whack-a-mole by going and finding the ones that are doing this and then taking them out of the store. But they still have a lot of problems with copycat extensions that are coming in through ads. So they don't really have it all worked out. But if you are using Chrome and you do use cryptocurrency, be very careful of what Chrome extension you use. The next bit of news is about ThunderSpy, which is a name of an exploit that is not patchable, that exists on any computer that uses Thunderbolt. So I think that's Thunderbolt 2 and 3. The thing that's at least some mitigation on this is that does require physical access to your computer, and the computer has to be powered on, even if it's asleep. The way this works is essentially they can plug in things into your Thunderbolts that can imitate trusted devices, or and essentially get access to all your RAM, which could include things like any sort of passwords or ability to decrypt your hard drive and that sort of thing. So just keep in mind, if you are in it's called the evil maid attack. I mean, don't leave your machine on and where someone else can get a hold of it for a little while if you think that is a problem, that you're at any particular risk for this. So, and as an aside, Apple is a little less vulnerable. Macs are a little less vulnerable than most other computers, because Apple has kind of ignored Intel security, which is not very well done, and they have done more to on their own level of security. So Apple has done the best out of a bad situation. So now there is an update for Acrobat Reader, because the existing version has a flaw that enables root access. So if you're using Acrobat Reader, then update it. Next thing is an article on phone hackers push COVID-19 tracking. And what phone hackers in this context means is a firm called Cellebrite, who is pretty well known for cracking phones. I think they're used like for the FBI and things like this. And that company and other companies are pushing their products to other governments, India, UK, places that are not necessarily looking at the version that is coming out from the joint effort by Apple and Google. And the one that itself is pushing is much more likely to violate privacy, and but I think it's being kind of pushed at a country by country basis. So we'll see how that all works out. Now, there's another email scam going around, which is a DHL email scam, but it could as well be FedEx or anything else. And this is just an email that says, "Oh, you're expecting a package. Please click here to register for tracking," or something like this. And of course, they ask for your password. And the idea here with this scam is that they'll try your password credentials on DHL, but they'll also try your passwords on other sites like banking or whatever to try to get access to your financial stuff. So be careful with any emails that you're taking links from. This particular email scam was pretty easy to detect because you could look at your URL and you could see that you were not on DHL website. So standard cautions apply here. So Godaddy reported a breach, and they really didn't talk a lot about it. It dates back to 2019. It doesn't seem that a ton of things were done, but they do recommend that if they contact you, they recommend you do an audit of your hosting content. So anybody out there runs websites or has GoDaddy, take a look and see if there's been any communication from them or check your credentials. Another interesting little kind of sort of email scam, puppy scams, and this is an interesting thing I had not heard about. And this is where people are selling pets and online, and they show you pictures of pets, and they'll want you to contact them to buy them. And these are, from what the Better Business Bureau is saying here, is that 85% of these, of any types of selling pets online, are scams. And the way really to avoid these is that you look to see if, how they accept the money, right? I mean, generally they will not accept things that can be tracked. So standard things like credit cards and stuff they won't take. They'll want you to use Western Union or MoneyGram or gift cards. And they have a few recommendations in this article about how to kind of determine whether this is a real offer or not, but in general, be very reluctant to believe in sales of pets online right now. There's also a lot of aspects about this where they may then claim a delay in shipping the pet because of coronavirus and have extra fees and all. They really ramp it up. So something to be aware of. The next bit of news is Google Drive now supports Face ID and Touch ID. And this is a nice bit of convenience, and especially how slow most Google tools are to adopt Apple. So that is available if you're using Google Drive. Now, for the contact tracing, this article here talks about some updates to the API. This is just about to be released in the next version as the gold master for the beta testers right now. So there's a little bit of information on this. It will be used. It's providing the ability to track who you've been in contact with in a privacy-oriented way. And Google and Apple have been working on this in a very significant amount of work. And it should be, the first component of this should be out probably this week, as the gold master of this is out in beta today. So now, it's part of this upcoming release that I'm expecting this week is a bug in iOS Mail that has been reported a lot, and there's been a lot of concern about how old it is and how many people, how many people are affected. But it doesn't seem like in reality that all that many people are affected, because this particular bug cannot by itself be used to compromise your security or your mail. So it could be used in combination with other exploits, but it seems unlikely. But either way, Apple is patching this, and I do expect that patch to be released this week. So it's good to get that one. Um, Check your ISP for security measures. This was an interesting article put out by Cloudflare, which is the backbone, kind of the main infrastructure company for the internet. And they are they will look and see what ISP you're using and let you know if your ISP is supporting a certain security measure. That if they don't implement this, it does allow uh, for potentially your traffic to be hijacked and go to a different server than what you would expect. So this is not an immediate crisis. Has been in place. I mean, the problem and the solution have both been in place for a long time. And Cloudflare is really just wanting to put pressure on ISPs to get this fixed before it really starts to become a problem. So it would be good to check this out. And if you're interested, you know, send an email to your ISP saying you have plans to put this in place. Because essentially it's just not going to get done if there's not a demand for it, or a big crisis. So and then the next article here on online ads, security and blocking ads is a good overview of why you should think about blocking ads and how online ads are generally a security risk, and how to block them and when to make exceptions and allow the trusted sites you have that you want to support to have them if you want. So, but it's a good read, and it's helpful to understand the specifics about why blocking ads is good for your security. Okay, so the next section Linda has is on the legal, political, financials, and the first thing is the Apple results from the last quarter, and they've announced they generated 58 billion in revenue, and service and wearables was up, and the hardware was down. So they have not given guidance on the next quarter. I mean, during this current quarter, um, with the whole thing going on with COVID, I mean, I think that things are certainly not going to match their old expectations. But um, we'll see how everything will play out. But it's certainly not unique to Apple. It's already hitting a lot of places around the whole everything. So the next thing is Apple sells some bonds, and apparently Apple doesn't usually do this, and they are offering they are selling some bonds because when they're selling bonds. So there are some short, mid, and long term bonds, and you can read this article and see more about if you're interested in getting bonds from Apple. Next thing is Apple settles FaceTime lawsuit, and so apparently this was about a class action lawsuit in California that accused Apple of intentionally breaking FaceTime on older iPhones. Apple settled an $18 million settlement, and I think each of the people who were involved in the class action suit will get like $3. So uh, not much. That's typical class action stuff. This next thing was pretty neat. Apple helping retailers in India, and Apple is helping of its exclusive stores, about 500 of them in India, covering some of their rent and salaries of the staff. So they're really going way above and beyond to help out their infrastructure in India on the retail side, and they're doing even more than just those 500 stores, and helping out in different ways in terms of how quickly they have to pay for the hardware they get and the rest of it. So it's interesting to hear about how Apple's working with India, with Apple retailers in India. All right, for the general news, the fantastic news is that the new MacBook Pro was released, 13-inch, and it was the last of Apple's computers that still use the old butterfly switch. So now everything that Apple sells has gotten rid of the butterfly keyboard, and everybody's happy. I mean, it seems like all the headlines on this are like, and all the online reviews like immediately start off with a keyboard, and that seems like me to make the major uh, reason to consider getting this. Although there were some incremental spec upgrades as well. So I'm really happy to see that Apple has finally gotten rid of the butterfly keyboard and hopefully can start repairing their reputation on the quality of their hardware. All right. Next article is how to set up Face ID to work with a mask. And this just explains ways about showing uh, how to train like the alternate version of your mask, of your alternate version of your um, Face ID kind of by putting a mask partly on like one side of your face and then on the other to get Face ID to recognize your face with a mask on. I've never tried this. I have no idea how well this will work, and so I don't use the same kind of mask all the time. I don't know if it would even be worth the trouble. But for some people, it might be. Check it out. Oh, the other thing, Facebook SDK causes other apps to crash, and this was kind of a big irritation because an SDK essentially is a library, some code that most people or many larger apps use, say to log in with Facebook. But there was a bug in their SDK that was causing many apps out there to just crash for no reason, and I believe that's been fixed. Uh, Apple did an acquisition for a VR company down in the Los Angeles area, and of course, there's not a lot of details about what this will mean, but the rumors are thinking about this will be something to do with Apple TV Plus, the actual creating the content side. Is articles about Apple releases 2020 supplier responsibility report. And essentially, what this is talking about COVID for their suppliers. So the suppliers are going to have to be using masks. They're going to have to use distancing, the rest of it, and it goes into those details. So, but good to see that Apple is requiring its suppliers to also have a safe workplace. All right, next thing is some of the older MacBooks are deemed vintage or obsolete. And so these are, the vintage ones are still supported. Um, and their vintage ones are still eligible for repairs and service, but only if the parts are in stock. And after the obsolete ones are not eligible for repair. So if you have any vintage computers, you might want to do any service on them now before they are actually phased out as from support. Now the Mac stores look like they may be reopening. Um, may have an opportunity to do that in the coming months. All right, the next article was about showing what it's like in an actual reopened Apple store, which was in Australia. And a lot of this is pretty similar to most open stores right now in the US. mask required, 6 feet distancing, but they also do temperature checks and a bit more. So I think they're going a little further than your typical store is right now. Next thing was an article about from Apple about how to some airport of the new AirPod Pro users are having issues with static, and Apple has some advice to help for those AirPod users to resolve the problem before giving up to have to. I mean, mostly I think these can resolve the problem, but some of them it will not, and those devices may require service. I have no idea how large this issue is. I don't know to what point. I, but I don't. It's certainly not affecting everybody. There are just some number of AirPod users, but I haven't heard anything specific on that. All right. The next thing is Apple Watch dominates in growing markets. So I believe they said for the first 3 months of this year, the Apple made up over half of all smartwatches in the world that were sold that time. So they're doing great as far as this goes. There are more details there. Worldwide Developers Conference is coming up on June 22nd. It's virtual only, and I think that will allow a lot more developers to attend. And so I think this will be an interesting experiment for Apple to do this online for the first time. The next part is there's an online tutorial for 1Password. I think Screencast made this free, and I personally use 1Password. I like it a lot. I definitely would check this out to see how it works and how to get the most use out of it. All right, and the next thing is because of COVID, Apple is allowing Apple Card customers to defer payments. This has been going on for I think 1 or 2 months already, and but each time you have to re-register for if you can't make your payment that you can defer the payment for I think it is a month of May. So, if you do it on a previous month, you have to do it every month. You have to re-sign up for it per month. So let's see. And this upcoming iOS 13.5 release that is in Gold Master Beta right now is supposed to help skip Face ID when you're masked. So how I've heard this works is that if you put your phone up to your face and if it detects a mask, it will immediately allow you to enter your PIN, your passcode, and then it's just quicker than the way it still does that right now, but it just takes longer. So it'll be optimized. The next thing was Lisa Jackson, who is the Apple environmental chief, talking about what they've accomplished on during Earth Day earlier this month. So it was quite interesting. I had forgotten some of the details on this, but right now, Apple, all of its facilities worldwide are run on renewable energy, and it's also helping suppliers transition to 100% renewable energy as well, and working also on getting more and more out of sourcing their raw materials from recycled hardware. So they've really done a great job, and it's interesting to hear where they are at this point. Now, Apple's site shows how shelter in place is working. This was kind of interesting. This is Apple making some very high level information about people using Apple Maps and to give you to give you an idea of how many people are going out and about right now over time during the uh, shelter in place. So you can go to this page and you can see exactly how many people were trying to get to a destination, to give you an idea of how many people were traveling. It also gives you, it also, because Apple Maps can do walking versus car versus transit, it kind of breaks down the statistics in that way. I believe geographically they're rather large areas to help with privacy, but it's interesting. And last thing on part about Apple is they are starting to reopen some stores, and I think they are planning to do about 25 here in the U.S. in the next couple of months. And it's a little difficult to find exactly which stores. I've seen someone map that I believe the ones in Monterey and I think Modesto are opening pretty quickly. But I think most of them in the Bay Area are still not planned to be opened in the immediate future. But yeah, you can check out this link or look at different sources for to see when an Apple store may be reopening. Of course, they will be using all the COVID-19 protections, and Apple seems to be more aggressive than most, including temperature checks. All right, so definitely have some software updates. Yeah, I think some of these, I think we're already moving on to iOS 13.5 soon. There's been a big update to Logic Pro. COVID-19 app has been updated, and the firmware for the AirPods Pro, which is in line with the static problem I was talking about earlier. All right, and the last part are a few rumors. And Apple, one of them is Apple's planning to get some employees back in the offices, and those are, looks like those are planning to be staged over the next few months. Certainly not going to be everybody, but probably the key people, especially who are working on hardware or things that are difficult to do from home. So that's the rumor. 2020 phones are still thought to be behind schedule. The prediction at this point is about a month behind schedule. So some, but not they're not going to miss a generation or anything. The last thing, there's been a lot of thought about when Apple's going to release their AR glasses, and one of the rumors was thinking, this summer, but a different source is looking at probably next spring to next summer, so March to I think July 2021. So a lot of stuff. That's everything I have, and thank you, Linda, for putting this list of news together.
So now everybody should be seeing a keynote presentation that says expanding type on the Mac. Hopefully that's the case.
A participant has left the meeting.
Okay, so, all right, so this whole field of expanding type on the Mac has lots of options, and that's the good news, right? Apple has a built-in system. Smile Software's text expander is kind of the granddaddy of it all. Lots and lots of people use that. There's also Type It For Me, which is the one I chose to examine more closely. There's Typinator 8, which is also a good choice, and there are still others. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is Apple's inbuilt system, because if you haven't played in this area before, this is really easy, and it would give you a chance to just play a little bit before you do anything else. And then it might be enough. It might be all you want, depending on how you use your Mac. So let's go here. There is one review article that I want to mention, and the review article goes through many of these choices. Actually, it goes through with some detail on each one. The one issue that I had with the article is that with respect to Type It For Me, it will tell you that Type It For Me does not allow you to go cross-platform. And that is not accurate. Type It For Me does, first of all, you can link your two Macs using iCloud, or your 2 or 3 or however many Macs you have, if you have more than one Mac. And secondly, there is an app for iOS, so you can in fact go cross-platform. I actually wrote to the author of the article to tell him that there was an error in there, and I did not hear anything back. The article though is fairly recent. It's like March of this year. So you would hope that most of the rest of the information is good. And one of the good things about it is that it does give you a fairly good description of each of the apps and has good things to say about all of them actually.
Where did
So
you see that article is?
it's linked from the slides here, and so we'll get, I don't want to go off the keynote presentation to go look at the article, but it's linked. That's why there's the underline. You see the underline? Yeah. So so there's that. So suppose you want, you're just beginning to play around with this, or you already use a particular one and you're going, well, I may want to choose a different text expander. First question is, how much do you actually need? Because some are more full featured than others. There's a lot of people that could get by, like I said, with just Apple's choice, which we'll get to in a minute. There's also the cost. One of the reasons that a lot of people chose to switch off text expander by Smile is because they changed their policy. Instead of just charging a one-time cost for the software, they went to a subscription model, and it amounts now to about $40 a year, which gets a little pricey. Whereas Apple's choice obviously is free, totally free. So, hey, why should I pay money when I can do something for free? But on the other hand, Text Expander and the others do a lot more than what Apple's Apple's inbuilt system does. My own thought, what happened for me, going back to the article for a moment, they chose Type Expander as their favorite, but also pointed out the expense. But they also liked Typinator, and then I ended up choosing Type It For Me. Reason being, I wrote to both of those vendors, and Type It For Me got back to me pretty much immediately, and I never got any response at all from Typinator. And my thought, if I'm going to link up with, any app for any length of time, I really like the idea of a responsive vendor. Now who knows, maybe my email got lost and Typinator is great at response, but that was just what happened for me. The other thing about Type It For Me is that they have been around since System 6. So that's a long time. And the vendor that's been around, they're small. That's, I think it's just a father and son. But anybody who's been around for that length of time, it leaves a warm and fuzzy feeling in my heart anyway. The other piece of information about this type expanders generally is that you can change your mind. Most of them will allow you to import the snippets that you have or export. So you can go from one to another if you decide that that's what you want to do. Excuse me. So let's take a look at the next thingy here. So the Apple built-in system, to get to it, you would just go to System Prefs and then look under Keyboard and then click the tab that's titled Text. So that's easy enough. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like on my Mac anyway, because these are the ones I've input. And they have several that they've done as samples. The .c for .com, the ASU is theirs. They also have normally listed BTW for by the way, but I'm so used to typing that into chat, and most of my friends know when I'm saying by the way, they know that acronym, so I have erased that. But I did add SV for SVMUG. I did add, CH for Charles. I did add LG for my name, and LY because lots of times when I'm typing an email, some people I want to give my full name to at the end. Other people, it's my buddies and they know who I am. So I just type my first name. So this gives you an idea. Rather obviously, you can add or subtract. It's down here in the red. And this is just shows you where it is, the text. Excuse me. So type it for me. When you if you install type it for me, and I would guess this is going to be true for any of the rest of them that are not done by Apple. You double click the app, and then you're going to need to do something to quote allow it to control your computer, because if it doesn't have that ability, it's not able to input the fully typed out words in your various apps, in Mail or whatever apps you're using. And then you restart your Mac. So that's easy enough. This is where it takes you to the allow to control. It's in security and privacy. I'm pointing to my screen. But anyway, security and privacy, I've circled the two areas so you can see that. And I have other apps that I use. Obviously, you have to unlock it in order to change that system pref. So there's that. Now let's go here. So here's some examples. In the when you get the app, if you use the app, type it for me, they give you all of these examples, and you can keep that or not. This is a partial window, by the way. I couldn't get all of it onto the keynote. But it has several different things that are kind of interesting that I want to point out. And I did not, in my own experimentation, I did not get into the details on these, but it will, for instance, I mean, some of it is fairly simple. The SVT down here says is to save time. Their T4M expands out into type it for me, etc. But it also does things like allows you to play with AppleScript, which that's not something I personally have done, but that's a level of sophistication. And it also has it allows you to open applications. Now, exactly how you set that up, I haven't figured out, but you can open Mail. They show that as an example. So that's something of the ability of what's there. But if you, can people read this? Actually, I'm not going to be able to hear you anyway, but hopefully you can read the, what's on here.
Yes, can you read really clearly, at least on my big screen?
Okay, good, thanks. All right, so I'm going to go here with the next thing. So advantages and capabilities that it has. It offers sets, so you can keep that bunch of examples if you want to keep it, which I have chosen to do, at least for now, because I want to play around with it some more. And then I have put another set in that I'll show you in a moment that's like Linda's, so I know that that's the ones that I input on my computer. If I had, now I'm retired, as are a lot of us, but if I had a full-time job, I might have some that I use specifically for work, or when I had my own business, and then others that I might use for personal. So I can have those as just 2 different sets or 3 different sets, however many you want. Let's see, it does the Apple scripts and dates. I mentioned that. It shows up in your menu bar, and I'll show you that again when we get to the demos. And you can open apps. I just mentioned that. It also offers, and this is, I don't know if other type expanders do this or not. Apple Inbuilt certainly does not, but it allows you to choose different ways of doing autocorrect. And I will show you that in just a moment when we do with the option of doing sound as well. So let me get here. All right, so we're going to do a demo. Now, can you see the symbols up on the window here on the menu bar?
We can.
Good. All right. So, all right, that's not what I want. I want this one. This one is type it for me. So here, there's Linda's examples. You can see that now. Yes? Yes. Okay. All right. So that gives you, so if you're typing away on something and you go, I know I did a little abbreviation for SVMUG. And I go, SVU, I can't remember it. Oh, that's not right. That doesn't work. It doesn't get me anything. So I don't remember what it was I did. I can simply go up here, hit this thing and go, where was it again? SVMU, that's what I want. And I go, SVMU.
Linda, I am sorry. I see just a little bit of a screen. It says Untitled RFTD, RTFD.
It says what? I'm sorry.
It's the screenshot on a background of snowy mountains.
That's well, you should have. Can you see my cursor moving around?
I see something moving around. It's like a, well, it's a twiddly thing. I see.
Yeah, that's all you're supposed to see right now. You're okay.
Okay.
All right, there. Now. Okay, now I'm not going to get it. Here, hang on a second. So let's try another one. All right. All righty. So there. Did you see what that did? So I typed SV. I hit the space bar. I get SVMUG. That's what it does. That's the basic idea of text expansion. Here's what I have listed. So I have one that says ACH. It goes, ask Charles, because I make a to-do list of things that I want to ask my husband about. And so, okay, so I can just type that in really quickly. So it gives me that little abbreviation. Now on the examples, go ahead, Kenji.
So it's case sensitive so that you can type ACH without it being confused with something something in a word.
I believe it is case sensitive. This is one of the things that I'm curious about, that I don't have an answer to this question, but I'll tell you what my experience has been. Watch what happens here. I'm going to type in capital letters, LG, and notice that my name comes out in all caps. But if I go L lowercase, it doesn't. Now, what's interesting is I have this in both the Apple text expander that I showed you, in System Prefs, and I have it in Type Expander. And as far as I know, both of those are live at this point. So that's kind of a mystery at this point. But what does seem to be the case, excuse me, is that if I type whatever, what do I want to say? If I type anything, this seems to be consistent. And yet in Apples, you would think Apples would take the predominant, would be the dominant app, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like if in Text Expander, it seems that if you make both capitals, because so I have LG here, and if I do it caps, but I also have LG, in the Apple one as well. So that's what's happening there. Exactly why that's happening, I don't know. I will tell you, just for uses for this, for people who have not used text expansion at all, if you correspond with somebody, or if you do, for instance, a long time ago, I was teaching a class for using iPad for real estate people. And in this valley, of course, if you're a real estate person, you could be working with someone, let's say someone of a particular descent, where their name is like really long, and you're corresponding with a client. You want to be able to type their name correctly, because that's how you honor another person. So I have a friend whose name is Suprita. She is of Indian descent, and it took me a little while to get that down. She's my neighbor. So I have her name in there, SUPR, and I get Suprita. So I have her name, so I won't misspell her name. So that's another use, okay? So let's see. You can, as I said, you can do AppleScript in this app, which I have not done. You can do dates. You can do, and then the thing about choices of an autocorrect. This I want to show you. So let's go up here. So if you want the whole window, so I showed you how you can get to your examples, to your ones, and as many sets as you would have would all be listed down here. But if you go up to Manage Snippets, then you get the full window. All right. And so this is now what I've got highlighted here is the examples. And you can see all the ones that they've offered. That showed on the other window. DS for Dear Sir, BR for Best Regards, Lorem Ipsum, if for some reason you want to put in Latin placeholder text, save time, type it for me, et cetera, et cetera. There's the dates. But if you go to Preferences here, and you go to autocorrect, they offer, you can put in, let's see, ignored words. I don't know why I have that in there, but it's in there if you want to ignore some words. you can put in, choose typos using autocorrect dictionary. You can choose tidbits autocorrect. Folks, I think, are probably familiar with tidbits. And then you can undo that if you want to undo it. But I chose to use that dictionary just out of curiosity because I knew it was different from Apple's built-in. And then the other thing you can do is beep on correcting a typo. So how many times is autocorrect typed in something that you were not happy with, that you did not mean to say? So this way, it makes a little noise if you have this on. It's minorly annoying, at least for me, but it's not that big of a deal. And you can choose which inbuilt, if you want it to be the frog or the tink or whatever. I have the purr. Reminds me of my cat. So it points out to me that it's just done an autocorrection, and then that way I can look at the darn thing and make sure it hasn't said something I didn't want it to say. So that's one of the things that you can do, which is kind of a cool thing. Now, I don't know for sure how many of the other apps do this. Maybe all of them do, but there's a lot actually in the preferences. This app is a lot more extensive than I expected it to be. I thought it would be more minimal. It does a lot of things, and I'm still learning it. So anyway, because there's a lot in the various preferences. So there's that. Now, a couple other things that I will mention. One is that, hopefully I'm not jumping ahead in my own keynote, but one thing is that it offers good documentation. I actually went through, it's well written. I went through in order to learn the app. It's well written. There's an occasional little smile in there, something they say that's mildly funny. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going through it and learning the app. The one thing it doesn't have that you would find with an app like Smiles Type Expander is that it doesn't have, it doesn't have two things: the community, because there's a huge community of people that use Type Expander, the expensive one, and they exchange various snippets, so you can learn snippets from other people and get a whole bunch of snippets that other people have already done and just import them into your app. And then the other thing is that there's a lot of video tutorials on that app. So if you prefer video, I did not find a video tutorial for Type It For Me. So let me go back here. That's a demo. So we did the demo. I think I mentioned this already, but just to reiterate, the whole bunch of them, you can move your snippets from one to another. If you try Type It For Me, you don't like it, you go, no, I want Text Expander, it's worth it to me. You can export what you have from Type It For Me and import it into the other, into Text Expander, whatever else. For us,
Does that include the Apple keyboard?
What about the Apple keyboard?
Being able to type, being able to import and export shortcuts there?
Not that I know of. I don't see a way to do that. The thing about Apple's choice, it works fine for people who want something minimal, but it is very minimal. So it's less, whereas Type It For Me, Typinator, a Text Expander, the more elaborate ones allow you to go in and out. And all of them will have, well, at least Type It For Me, and I would bet you Typinator and some of the others have instructions in their documentation about how to import from Text Expander, because a lot of people did that when Text Expander went subscription model. So for us, we have a 30% discount for these folks. Expires June 30 if you're interested. There's also a free trial if you just want to download it and play with it and see if you like it or not. That, of course, is fine. Let's see. The review article, I mentioned the one correction that's needed because they're not accurate on Type It For Me being cross-platform. And then there's also an article, it's from 2017, so it's older, but it does talk about type expanders generally and does list some of them. So that's that. Let me hit the play button here again. So I will, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. I will go to taking any questions that anybody else has. We'll go there. So
Linda, do these apps work across different, the text expander apps? Do they work across different apps? Like, for example, if I'm working in Word, or if I'm working in Excel, or if I'm working in just different apps that I'm typing,
Yes.
do these expanders work in every one of those apps? Or
Yes,
do you have to? Okay.
they should. The only caveat I would make is that if you had, I mean, certainly they would in Word and Mail and text edit and, you know, anything that you use pretty generally on the Mac, any of the big names. They will not work so well in Safari because there's a block that there's a safety thing that Apple has put into the system. So if you were typing a URL into Safari, that I think will not work. And then the only other, if you're using something very obscure, it might not work. But I
have a lot. Use my email, for example, does not have a correction kind of thing when I'm typing in my email. You know, I'm in Yahoo Mail, and you know, it'll show up.
Yeah, if you're using webmail, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because I think most of the people I know use an app. They use either mail.com or some other, I mean, mail.app or some other. But wait, I'm not sure how it would work in a like a Yahoo Mail or something that's on the internet where you're just typing into the internet.
Thank you.
That's a question. I don't know one way for sure. You might try, what I would do is try Apple's, you know, just use, because that's free anyway. Just try it with Apple's and with the one in the system prefs that I showed you, and then see if that works. You know, I haven't used webmail in ages, so that's, yeah. Anybody else have any questions on this?
I'd just like to comment. I mean, I have been using a couple different text expansion projects at work for the last several years. And my experience has been like Google Mail, things like that, web-based forms and stuff work just fine.
Oh, interesting. All right.
I mean, there's very few places you can find that will not work.
All right.
Also, if you're curious, you can also Type It For Me has a demo that you can just try it out, and if you have concerns about it. So I'd recommend that. Also, I'd like to add one point is the naming convention you use when you have short things and you're wondering if they might conflict with real words or parts of words.
Right.
I think as I explored in this and I learned to use this kind of thing, I did find a good solution where they suggest putting a semicolon after it when you have your short little phrase. So that way, people don't hardly use semicolons in anything. So if you like, for like my email address, if I like EM would be my email address, it would fill in my full email address. I would just type EM semicolon. And that way, if I had to type some abbreviation that used EM space or something, it wouldn't throw my email address right there. But if I
let me make a comment about that. With you can change some of this in the preferences, but with Type It For Me, what you do is you type the two or three, however many letters, and then hit the space bar. It doesn't fill in unless you hit the space bar. So you don't, I mean, so you can still do the semicolon thing, but it's not necessary, I think, with that app.
I see, yeah.
That may be different in other other type expanders could be different.
Yeah. But yeah, they work all over the place. And again, the demo is there.
Yeah, play with the demo, whatever whatever you want to do. So it's fun. Or at least if you haven't done this before, I would recommend at least play with apples a little bit because it's fun. It's actually very cool to, if you've got a paragraph or a few words or whatever, and you can just type a couple things and hit space bar and boom, it's there. It's very cool. So I'll stop now.
Now, Linda, do you also use Type It For Me on your iOS devices?
I don't, and I'll tell you why. On my iOS devices, I almost always dictate. I very rarely I very rarely do any direct typing. And I also use Notability with an Apple Pencil where I'm just literally writing as if I would with a pencil. So that's how I do input on iOS. I just don't usually use that. But there is an app for it, which I haven't tried. I can't say anything one way or the other. I think they just updated it fairly recently, but I haven't played with it. So other questions from anybody?
Just a comment, Linda, from Kim Smith.
Hi, Kim.
I use the built-in Apple item on my iOS devices, and it works great,
Yes.
especially for an email address. The only trick is I tap it and it fills it in, and it automatically puts a space after my email address. So I have to tap backspace one key. But I have 3 different email addresses and they're all ridiculously long, and it's really a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I've used Text Expander for a long time, and it's fine on the Mac, but on iOS devices, you have to use the Text Expander keyboard to enter it, and many things like I want to use it for typing my email address, and often the Text Expander keyboard is locked out
Oh,
on login screens,
right.
which is really frustrating. But
That
I guess you have control whether you can access other keyboards.
My suggestion for that is that for those things that you're using a lot on iOS, just use Apple's solution, like what Kim was talking about. Just use Apple's solution for that, and then that way it's handled because it has its own. You know what I'm saying?
I guess I didn't hear that.
Oh yeah. So what she was saying is that she has some extensive email addresses, and she uses the shortcut on iOS. And the interesting thing, at least that I've found so far, and you would have to play with it because you use Text Expander, a different one, but set up the things that you would use most often on iOS, set that up in Apple stuff. Just take those snippets out of Text Expander, put them in the Apple choice, and then you can use both.
Can you briefly touch on what the Apple choice is? Because I'm not aware of it.
Oh, I did. It was in the presentation. Hang on.
well.
So you go back. Should I go back to this?
To iOS?
Yeah, no, well, it's if you put it in, hang on here a second. Let me go back. Let's see what I can do.
If I put it in keyboard shortcuts in Mac, I can then access those on iOS.
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
So if I put a shortcut in keyboard on the Mac, it's then accessible on my iOS device?
Yes, because Apple, of course, has access, assuming that you're set up, that you use the same Apple ID on the Mac and the iOS.
Right.
Yeah, it absolutely will do that. So just take those items out of where you have it and put it in
okay.
Put it in the Apple choice and see how that works for you. Let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be interested to see that. Anybody else have any questions? And I'll turn it over to Charles and Robert for any tech questions.
Okay. There was a question asked earlier that was, can you fix the width of the columns in the Finder column view? Now, when you do a control click on the column resize icon, which is at the divider between columns, you can get various sets of options, such as resize this column, resize all columns individually, right size them, and so forth. But I don't know any way to fix them to a single width, and I don't know how you could specify the width. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah. Normal cases, I'm assuming people hopefully can see this window on the left here with a list view in Finder, and I can adjust the size.
Well, that's the list view. I think they had in mind the column view. So if you change to your column view, and then if you click on the control click on the resize symbol there, control click, there you go. You get those options, but I don't see
size. Basically, it's an automatic adjustment for all of your. Basically, it snaps that column to just the contents that you have showing in that thing. So it's supposed to be the ideal space.
Hey, that is actually my question. So let me ask, what is it that you're control clicking on? I'm sorry, I'm missing that.
In between each of these columns is a gray bar
Right?
And at the bottom of that gray bar is a little thing looks like a pause symbol
Or an equal sign or something. Yeah.
right down here.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you hold on that and option click on that,
Option click. Okay. But you have to
It's-
redo it every time. If
Sorry.
there's a window that you go to where things are constantly truncated, you have to redo it each time.
right, unless, does this help? Group by, sort by, blah, blah, blah. Always open in column view? No. That's a sticky one.
Okay.
Anybody else in the crowd here actually use this view on a regular basis?
Well, as far as I know, all you can do is the right sizing. And you can do the right sizing for individuals or for all of them together. But there's no way to specify a width and no way to make the width permanently set.
You might be able to do it with a third party with like Moom. That's what I'm wondering, but I don't know if anybody uses that. We had them in a couple years ago.
Well, I do have Moon running, but I haven't ever looked for that particular option.
All right. If you get a chance and feel like it, check it out for me. Let me know.
Okay.
Thanks.
I remember there used to be such an ability in there, but it was never very clear about when it would be saved and when it would not be saved.
Okay.
I opened that up.
Okay, so I see another question here. It says it cannot find the search box for mail on MacBook Pro.
Oh.
Okay, now the search box on mine is at the upper right of the window, and it's fairly clear. It doesn't show on your machine.
Who's asking the question?
Alana.
Unfortunately, I cannot pull up mail myself. I have far too sensitive materials in it.
Yeah, I have it up, and
That's right. Hold on, I unmuted myself. Think. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I am now next to my computer. I have no problems on iPad, on iPhone, and I am just absolutely stumped. Let me just
okay.
mail, okay, and there is a box that says move to. On the right, I have a box that says move to. On the
Okay.
left, there is nothing. It just drives me nuts.
Okay. Alana,
Yes.
do you see a double arrow at the very right of the window?
Out of it. God, I'm clicking on them.
All right, so you click on the double arrow. That should bring up a
More
little,
stuff.
a little
Okay, I
box.
just clicked.
A little box that shows both move, and then beneath that it says search.
But one of them said search.
Okay, there you go.
I still don't see where the search appeared, if anywhere.
All right, so you select search. All right. Okay. Now let me try this. Make the window, the entire mail window, a little bit wider.
I could enter a full screen.
Or
I did
just
full screen.
all right. And do you see a search box now?
Nowhere that I can. Oh, yes. Hold on. There is a search.
Okay.
Thank God I found it. So I've been working around it, trying to do it from the iPhone and iPad. So
Okay.
are you saying that every time I have to do that?
Well, not basically what goes on is this. When the window gets too narrow, it moves those particular boxes, the move to and the search, into a drop-down menu on the far right. And that's what the little arrows are for. So you should be able to click the double arrows and bring one of them up, or you should just open the window a little bit and
Yeah.
it should appear.
The one trouble
Charles?
in this case is that if it is not showing in the menu bar and you click the search here from the arrows, it does not actually offer any box you can type into. So you must make the window wide enough to fit that.
I only got it when I did full screen.
Yeah. Now, one way you can remedy that is if you rearrange the items in that top bar.
Can
If
I?
you hold-
Oh my God,
if-
I'm going to.
If you hold down the Option key and click in the space between the buttons, you can choose a customized toolbar option, which will let you set, remove, rearrange everything on that menu.
I am pressing the option. Now I am going to, I don't know what to do. How to rearrange it.
Okay, that should get you once you get the customized toolbar, then you should get a whole bunch of possible options that you can drag in and out to your preference.
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't get. I pressed option, and now where do I click to get the customized toolbar?
Did you click on the space between two of the items?
You mean okay here? Okay, maybe you mean here. No, there is a column that says mailboxes, inbox, VIP, sent, flag, draft. So these are the things, and I clicked on them. I think
Option
that
click
I
in
tried.
between the boxes. Click between the boxes in the gray space
Yeah, in the little gray spaces.
while holding down the option.
No, it didn't. Maybe I am not accurate enough in the minimal space.
Well, but I see it popping up on your, oh, that's Charles's screen. I'm sorry.
That's mine. Yeah.
Are you doing control option click or just option click?
Option.
Try control option click for me.
I am trying.
No?
I
I'll
will
tell you
try it
what
later because I think I am just not getting the teeny space right. You know, it's a teeny space of 1 pixel.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will make a screen capture video of the process, and I will put that up on YouTube so that y'all can watch it and see how to do it. Okay?
This
Okay.
has been stamping me for Charles. You have an in Apple. Tell them that it was a stupid idea to remove the search box from the top of the inbox.
Well, they didn't actually remove it. It simply disappears when the width is too small.
Yeah, there are just too many things in there.
Okay. The next question that I
Yeah.
see
Sorry, one
is-
last
Thank
word
you.
on that. If you can customize it, removing some of those unused items from that menu should free up enough space for the search bar to show up.
Great. Thanks. And I will watch the video. Let us know where to watch it, Robert. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks. I will mute me.
Thanks.
Now, the next one says, I have old FileMaker profiles I would like to access. Let's say I need FileMaker 1.0 to open. Is there any way to convert them or recover the data from them?
Wow.
Ooh.
I had a photographer friend with a similar question, and I think struggled with it for a very long time and did not get a satisfactory solution.
I don't know if it would work in this case, but someplace on the net, somebody's going to need to do some Googling. Someplace on the net, there's a web interface that will allow you to go back to some old screen sharing, some old apps, some old like OS 9 apps, oh, you know, pre-OS 10. That might be worth checking. And again, I'm sorry, I don't off the top of my head know the URL, but I would do some Googling or some DuckDuckGoing or whatever search engine you use to see about what website might offer. I do remember that there was something about that it would allow you to get into old Claris, files and stuff like that. Something on the net.
Let's see what I can find here. Are people seeing this web page listing from FileMaker?
Yes.
Okay, good. Here's the trouble that you're going to run into with that is like you're talking about a format that is what, roughly 25 years old, maybe 30 years old, and FileMaker has changed their format in an incompatible way at least twice, possibly 4 times in the intervening time. So the chance of actually finding the necessary conversion, you'd have to probably take it from like FileMaker 1 to FileMaker 4 to FileMaker 7 to FileMaker 12, something of that equally nasty kind of step. So a better option, assuming you have an old machine available, would be to fire up something in the FileMaker 1 to 4 range and save it in one of the more universal formats, such as CSV or Silk, maybe. You would lose any of your formatting and special layouts, but the data at least would be fully accessible.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Oh, here we go. Yeah, the bottom row on this table here. If your, oh no, that's if your current version is FileMaker Pro 1. So files will need to be converted to Pro 6, then to Pro 11 before going higher. Yeah, so I recommend reaching for, converting them to a CSV or a Silk if you can. If not, you're going to have to hunt down somebody with an older machine and the older OS.
Right. Okay.
So, nicely, we have a group of people here who might be able to accommodate you on that.
Any volunteers, I could send them the files.
I have a bunch of those old machines stuffed in a closet somewhere. If you're that anxious to get the stuff, you send me the files and give me a few months.
Okay.
The other thing you could do, Kenji, is put it up in the put up a request on our mail list.
Okay.
See if anybody else can do it more quickly, because Charles works lots of hours.
I knew I should have kept that Mac SE. What was I thinking?
That's right. That's right.
I also had a PowerBook 100. That would have done the trick too.
Yep. Then, of course, you're also going to run into similar problems with how do you get the file from there to here?
Good question.
So, well, sure. Here's a floppy disk with it. Oh dear.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's the best we can offer. Next.
Okay.
Next one is from Jim Gill. It says he's unable to upgrade the watchOS to the latest version. Any suggestions? And that sounds serious if you can't upgrade it.
I've tried restarting both the watch and the iPhone, and that has not helped. And those are the primary suggestions from Apple.
Okay. Now, in the Watch app on the iPhone, when you go to General and go to Software Update, does it indicate it needs an update?
Yes, it does.
And when you select Update, does it say it's downloading it?
It says it's downloading and it seems to start doing that, and then it says an error has occurred, and it was not able to update the watch OS.
Okay. Are you running out of storage space on your iPhone?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Are you running out of storage space on the watch?
Again, I don't believe so, but I'm not sure about that. I can check that.
Which model is it?
2, it's a version, it's a serial 2, series 2.
Watch OS 6. Yeah, you should be okay to install that. Okay, well, that's not helpful. Usually space is a good indication of that, but that may not necessarily be enough. If it, can you tell if it is managing to download the whole thing first?
I don't know how to tell that. So the short answer to your question is no.
Yeah.
I can go back and look and see how much space I have on my, see, it downloads first to the phone and then it gets transferred from the phone to the watch, as I understand it.
That's correct.
And so I can see how much space I have left on the phone to make sure that I can at least download to that. I'm not sure how to check the amount of space I have on the watch.
In a similar manner to your phone, you can go into the settings app on the watch and go to general and about, and it should show you how much is available, how much available space there is from there.
Okay. I've got 24.6 gigabytes available on the phone.
More than enough.
That seems, yes. I haven't tried calling Apple asking for their help, so maybe that's the next step.
Yeah, maybe. What you may end up having to do is to reset the watch. Presumably there is nothing, as long as you do a full sync of the watch beforehand, you should be able to erase the thing entirely, back to brand new settings, and then treat it as if it's a new model. And it should catch the update in that case. It's an extreme, but you shouldn't lose anything.
Okay. Okay,
When
sure.
the
Thank you.
Yeah, when the Apple stores reopen, you might want to, try a Genius Bar appointment and let them do the update.
Well, I certainly feel safer with that than doing it myself. Thank you.
Okay. The next one here, I do not know anything about. It says it's from David, and it says, I've been bitten by a particular image capture bug. And he says he uses image capture, and he wrote a C program to check it. So maybe, David, do you want to explain that a little more?
Yes. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Okay. So what that news article says is that if you move pictures from your iPhone to your Mac using image capture, and I think you don't uncheck show originals, but I'm not sure about that, then each image, each JPEG that goes to the Mac has a megabyte or more of null characters appended to the end of it. And so I wrote a tiny C program to check to see how many of the images on my disk had more than a megabyte of nulls on the end, and there were a lot of them. And I would recommend not using my tool because a JPEG file has chunks. That is, there are 4-byte codes that lengths all the way through it. And so just trimming it back, although it seemed to cause no problems, is not really the right way to fix it. So the article that I posted does link to, in particular, a new version of Graphic Converter that will have a check for that. And at a megabyte per picture, you can get back a lot of space on your main SSD drive if your image library is subject to this bug.
Okay.
That's a good tip.
What was that you're talking about, David?
Turn on the chat for this meeting, and I posted the link there to the article.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just had a comment. I've asked about this before, I think, and didn't. I think I asked about it on the in the group, and nobody had an answer for it. But I was being driven crazy by MD Worker 32 crashes, and also almost sometimes like several times a minute. Other things that I think were running on it were also crashing. So my work was constantly being interrupted with these Evernote Spotlight search was crashing all the time. And I thought that since MD Worker 32 suggested it was a 32-bit component, I decided to upgrade to Catalina and see if I could leave that behind. And I'm happy to report it solved both problems completely. I haven't seen it at all since I upgraded.
Excellent. Yeah. Had you tried re-indexing before that?
No.
That's a bit of a long shot. I don't think it would have helped you. You probably were doing the right thing in reinstalling or updating the OS, because I'm betting that something in MD Worker itself or one of its supporting cache files got corrupted. So yeah, that's you did. I think you did the right thing there.